Welcome to the Sonia Buchanan Show, where we inspire one life, one smile at a time. Great day, everyone. It is time for the Sonia Buchanan Show, where we inspire one life, one smile at a time. Listen, we have an interesting show for you today, but first, let me give you the title. It is called Who's at the Table? This title resonates with the subject, Who's at the Table? I was up about 2 a.m. in the morning. I just kind of got up and I was toiling and just dealing with a lot of things, just trying to focus on my scenario of my life, and also just, what's really going on surrounding the atmosphere. Just wanted to just kind of reveal some things in the open to you all on the Sonia Buchanan Show. And again, our title today is Who's at the Table? One of the things, I have not given a Bible study in a very long time. And today is not going to be one of those Bible studies. It's going to be thorough. It's this scenario that I'm going to talk about today is going to be very short and sweet. But there's one thing that I want to pinpoint, and that is the story of Jesus before the crucifixion, when he informed the disciples to go to a man's house and said that he wanted to use his home to have Passover. I don't know if you're familiar with that story, but the gentleman who owned the home prepared the table and the room for Jesus and his 12 disciples. They were on the second level of that house, so they were elevated in the house having Passovers, while the disciples and Jesus are sitting around the table. And I don't know if you remember this story, and I hope you do, but if not, you can always go into the Word of God. John speaks very inquisitive about the story. But what I want to talk to you and pinpoint something that's sitting at that table that was prepared for Jesus and the disciples, and on the second level, which was elevated. The reason why I'm being very specific about the details when I'm saying things, because it's very important. To give a revelation knowledge of something that was very prevalent in that story. As they were sitting around the table, Jesus mentioned to the disciples, he says, one of you will betray me. And the disciples says they were panicking because they were thinking, oh, I hope it's not me. Or, I hope it isn't me. Peter and John, they all spoke kind of concerned about would it be them. And Jesus goes on and he says, one of you will betray me. He says, he who dipped his hands in this bowl will be my betrayer. I don't know if you remember that. Now, I'm not reading the Word of God verbatim, but I'm giving you a scenario of what happened at that table. And Judas, sitting next to Jesus, leaned over and he says, is it I? Well, Judas dipped his hand in the bowl with Jesus at the same time. And when Judas dipped his hand in the bowl, and I want to pinpoint to something here. During the whole entire stories in the four Gospels, Jesus always distributed the bread to his disciples. They never handled the bread. Jesus always gave them the bread and then gave them the cup of wine. This was a scenario that pinpointed to me to draw the line that says that Judas dipped his hands in that bowl along with Jesus, as giving Judas an idea that he had some type of authority. And what was he going to do with the bread? Either feed himself or feed the disciples. I don't know. But in the scenarios previous before that, Jesus always broke the bread and gave it to his disciples. But in this scenario, at the Passover table, elevated on the second level, okay, Judas dipped his hand in the bowl with Jesus, and immediately when he did that, Judas was filled with the presence of the enemy. Satan consumed his body. And because they were all sitting at the table with Jesus before that, Jesus leaned over to Judas and immediately told him, go and do what you have to do. You know why he had to tell him to go and do that? Because Judas no longer are allowed to sit in an elevated place and sit at the table with his disciples who were a disciple of Christ. They were being prepared to be fishers of men. Satan had already been kicked out. If you go into the book of Isaiah 14, God kicked Satan out of heaven, and he saw him fall like lightning to the ground. So this is a scenario of Judas dipping his hand in a bowl. When he did that, Satan filled him up because he was out of order. He didn't have authority. The Father sent his Son to have authority, to reverse the curse over the earth. Now, when Judas was filled up with Satan, immediately he had to get up out of that room. He could not be elevated. He could not sit at the table with righteousness. He couldn't do anything except get up out of that room and do what you needed to do. Now, it's amazing how respectful Jesus is, because the disciples didn't know what he told Judas. If they did, if they heard Jesus say, go and do what you have to do, in the Bible it says they thought that Judas went out to take care of some funding issues, because Judas, he was the one who carried the money bag. He carried the money bag. He was the accountant for the group, in so many words. Now, I have over the years tried to research what occupation did Judas have previously before being a disciple of Christ. He is the only one that I could not find an occupation for. There is a chronicle book that gives the disciples, the 11 disciples, previous occupation. But I could not find an occupation for Judas. So he was the money carrier, the accountant, I guess. But nevertheless, that was just a little added point there. But I really wanted to pinpoint to you about that story, that before he dipped his hands in that bowl, he was okay to sit there. But once he dipped his hands in the bowl with Jesus as making himself equal to the authority in which the Father has sent his Son, when he did that, it filled him up with another presence. He no longer could sit at the table. He had to leave, and he went to negotiate with the Pharisees about trading Jesus, and he received the 30 shekels of silver for the exchange. And when he did that, Judas panicked and he hung himself, because he realized he had been deceived and he was manipulated. He turned an innocent man over in the hands of the enemy. Now, my point is about that table, because the name of this podcast is Who's at the Table? And this is something I wanted to share with you all, because in every segment of your life, you will be in a position where there are things that will test your maturity. It will test your integrity. And you have to be mature enough to be at a place where you are being tested, so that you can be elevated to the next level. And it continuously to go on. But as you do this over time, especially when you are going through career and going through jobs and going through all these things, we learn as we go through levels of elevation. And to me, I felt like Judas was learning and he was elevated at that time. But because doing the stories in the four Gospels, Judas was beginning to be, like I stated, concerned about where the money was going. You remember the story about Mary was pouring oil on Jesus' feet, and he hollered out, well, we can give this money to the poor. And it was that kind of thing. That's when it all really started. But I just wanted to just pinpoint to you guys about who's at the table, and more so looking inward at yourself, and also looking around who's at your table, far as right now. Because right now, there's so many things that's going on. And you can take that story and go different angles, but I don't want to do that for you. I just wanted to just narrow in on the story of Jesus and the 12 disciples doing Passover on the second level of that house, and they were getting ready to take Passover, take communion. But Judas decided to dip his hands in the bowl, which was the most craziest thing, because this is the only time where that happened. And but you guys, as you know, humility is a valued characteristics that we should eat all the time. But that is really what I wanted to talk about today, is that story at Passover, who's at the table. Just wanted to share that with you on this Sunday morning. It's about 4:30 a.m. in the morning. And I wish you well. Enjoy your day. And you guys, just remember who's at the table. And I'm really specifically asking who's at the table when it comes to you. Not looking outward at anyone else, but looking inward at yourself. Because like I stated, Judas dipped his hand in that bowl with Jesus, and Satan, a different presence. Okay? Because we deal with different presence, okay? And a different presence filled Judas up. And he was no longer able to sit at the table with the disciples and Jesus as they go on, fulfilling the word of God to reverse the curse. Okay? So you guys enjoy your day. Enjoy your Sunday. This is your girl, Sonya Buchanan, with the Sonya Buchanan Show, where we inspire one life, one smile at a time. Be blessed. Thank you for joining our podcast today. The podcast was produced and edited by Sonya Buchanan. For more information about the host, you can go to sonyabuchanan.com. For information about Comfort and Promises broadcast community, you can go to comfortandpromises.com. Thank you for listening to our broadcast, The Sonya Buchanan Show, where we focus on one life, one smile at a time. Until next time, bye you guys.